very much.
Okay, it looks like everybody's got all their paperwork, so once again, I'm Donna Gockler with Missoula Parks and Recreation, and this is a master site planning or visioning process for the Memorial Rose Gardens, and some people refer to it as Rose Memorial Park. But we're here to do a visioning process for the park, and I wanted to let you know that there had been a message going around that this discussion was about changing the name of the park. There's no intention at this point to change the name of the park or even discuss the name of the park. If that's something of importance to some of you, we can post that and deal with it at some later date, okay? What we really wanted to focus on was a vision for the park tonight. I want to introduce a few folks. This is James Poole with Wonderland. He's one of our consultants and a landscape architect in our community. Jenny Meinershagen is at the controls over there, and Jenny is with Rockingham Design, another landscape architect. And Dave Shaw is the Parks and Recreation Park and Trail Design and Development Manager. Imagine having that for your title. And that's been our core team. We chose James and Jenny and their firms through a request for qualifications process, because we felt like they've been very long time residents of Missoula and have been involved in a number of organizations and groups and had a really good feel for the park. And that was important to us because this park has a lot of feel to it, if you will, or a lot of emotion. So why a master site planning process and why now? I've been in Missoula since 1991, and I've been in my current position as director since about 2002. And the Parks Department receives numerous requests annually for installation of additional memorials, improvements to memorials, expansion of hardscape, addition of trees, and so on every year. And at some point, I guess what I compare it to is it's like if there were 6 members of your household all went out and bought the new living room furniture independently and then all decided to squish it in the living room, it probably wouldn't work out very effectively and you wouldn't be very happy with the ultimate result. You'd have plenty of seating, but I don't know if it'd be comfortable. And so one of the major reasons we wanted to have a visioning process is this gives our staff and the City Parks and Recreation Board and the City Council a vision or a plan to work toward. We understand what citizens want in that park, and it helps guide our decision making. Otherwise, every single request has to go through its own separate review. So a vision is very, very important. We've been conducting a number of them in the last several years, and I think McCormick Park Master Site Plan is probably one of the best examples. We went through a visioning process for that, and I remember council approving that in July 2003, saying, well, where's the funding to do that? And I said, there is none. And now we've probably got the project about 75% implemented. And I owe that to a community-wide vision. Once people all share the same vision, we're able to work toward that vision in a number of different ways with a number of different groups. So that's sort of in a nutshell what the vision is about. We also want the park design and the feel of the park and the uses of the park to be congruent, and so that when you are in that park, that it feels the way you think it should feel for the amenities that are there. And of course, you're very familiar with parks can be all over the place, from a very active athletic place to a very quiet, passive place. And there's other things that we're struggling with. We have a lot of trees and they're beautiful, but if you're a gardener, you know that too many trees and too much shade isn't exactly the best thing for all of the roses. And so we're trying to balance all those things. So a little bit about a master site plan. Primarily, it's a vision for our future, and it could be 20 years before we're able to implement it, but at least we all know what it'll look like. A little bit about the background we've done to date. We sent out a call to all the contact folks we had on our list at Parks, and I think through that process we were able to reach even more contacts. And we asked you and several other people about any historic or archival documents that you had. We searched our own park department records and city records, so we did a bit of a historical research. And if there's more of that available, we're always looking for history on all of the parks. We also completed a site survey, so we went out and actually sited so that we could place the amenities onto a GIS aerial map so we know exactly where everything is. We had several visits by the team, and it was kind of fun. One time we would go and look at it for maintenance purposes, and the next time I would go to feel the monuments, if you will, in the sense that that gives us. Another time maybe to visit the Rose Garden as a garden. So that helps all of us get a better view of what the park is, and we're also able to observe the social context of the park. People use the park in many, many ways. We did a mail survey to all the folks or groups that we could identify as stakeholders. And Dave will be covering some of the results of that. And I think that's most of it. We tried to gather all the history. We shared a lot of information with James and Jenny. We came up with some ideas based on all of that research, history, your comments to share with you tonight, and James and Jenny will get to that. What we'll do with the information obtained tonight, and we don't always know exactly what we're going to do because we don't know what we're going to learn. But by and large, the process will be is that James and Jenny and Dave will listen to everything you have to say after they share a number of ideas and concepts with you, and try and integrate those ideas and your priorities into a final draft of a master plan. And those things will be measured against your comments, all the prior surveys, the history, the department's knowledge of maintenance of the park, any deed restrictions, any of those kinds of documents to finalize a master park plan, which would then go on through to Park Board for approval. At some point, depending on the comments tonight and the process we go through, there may be yet one more additional comment period that could be either electronic, manual, or another meeting. But it often depends on how the planning process goes. Okay? So the other thing you have is a handout of questions that we're going to ask you to complete at the end of the evening. And you can add anything in addition to those comments and questions that we have asked you. We're trying to encourage, thought patterns that help these folks design a park that you want. So they're trying to figure out what's inside everybody's head here is their vision and assimilate that into one master vision. And so anything you can provide us tonight, that would be great. If you're the kind of person that likes to take it home with you and kind of think about it for a couple of days, that's okay too. If you can get us the responses back by Monday, then we'll start compiling the information. Okay? Dave is going to share some information on our initial survey and some guiding principles that we really use with every single park design we go through, and these are Parks and Recreation guiding principles. And then we'll go to ground rules and be on our way.
Hi, good evening. Great. Really glad to see everybody come out for this. This is a really good turnout for a park project like this. It's really exciting to see this many people. From a design standpoint, like Donna was saying, it's really nice to have this kind of workshop where our designers can have a chance to kind of get into everybody's mind and get a big picture for the vision of this park. Again, my name is Dave Shaw. I'm the Parks and Trails Design Development Manager, so I sort of take the lead on all the development projects, park development and trail development projects around the city. I wanted to briefly cover the highlights of the mail survey that was sent out to individuals and to groups. So we had a number of different organizations that submitted responses to this survey, as well as a number of different individuals. So I'm not going to go into every single response or all of the answers, but just kind of touch on the highlights so that you can get a sense for what the overarching responses were to this survey. There was a section in the survey that asked about events. What type of events people felt were appropriate for the park and whatnot. And if you remember the survey, those of you that took it, it had sort of a range where you could answer the question if you strongly disagree with a statement, or all the way to strongly agree with a statement. And some of the highlights from that section, The statement was no events should be held in the park. The organizational responses strongly disagreed with that. So they're saying that there should be events in the park, that this should be a park for events of different types. Other questions later on in the survey get at what type of events are appropriate in the space. But definitely people felt like events should happen there. The other really strong response was to this question. Alcohol, when permitted by the department, should be allowed. Organizations strongly disagreed with that. So people are saying, please don't have alcohol in the park. Let's talk about events, but let's not have alcohol at those events. Another question was, which activities are appropriate for the park? And then in the survey we listed a number of different activities. The ones that came out on top, the type of activities, were memorial events and services, and Rose Society events. From the organizations, those were the two that came out as most important. And just below that, activities would be quiet contemplation or weddings and anniversaries. So these are the types of things organizations were feeling are important. We also asked, we had a long list of possible facilities that could be in the park, like more walkways, more rose beds, more trees, more shrubs, what have you. And people ranked those different types of amenities from 1 to 10, 1 being most important or most desired, 10 being least desired. And the amenities that came out being most desired by the organizations were things like restrooms, accessible hard surface trails, more rose beds and benches. Second place underneath those facilities were things like a small gazebo or a stage, an arbor, or improved signage. Jumping down to the next question, what user groups should the park service? This was an interesting, I thought the responses to this were actually interesting. We had a list of different people or groups that could be serviced by the park. Most respondents checked all of them, that everybody should be serviced by the park. But some groups did come out a little bit on top of others, and the ones that got the most votes were groups like veterans and their families, Rose Society members and their families, and emergency veterans and their families. Let's see. From there, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the individual survey responses. There was a little bit of difference between the organizational responses and the responses we got from individuals who took the survey. Let's see here. When talking to individuals about events in the park, again going to those same two questions, they agreed very much with the organizations. Events should be held in the park, is what people were saying, the individuals are saying. And also they're saying, please, no alcohol in the park. There was kind of a dispersed variety of answers on a lot of the other points. This question here, which activities are appropriate for the park? These are the ones that rank the highest among individuals. Memorial events and services, Rose Society events, and quiet contemplation. Very similar to how the organizations answered. Also underneath that came in weddings and anniversaries and other activities such as family picnicking, painting, photography, and that sort of activity. The park facilities that individuals voted for, the ones that came out on top were restrooms, more rose beds, more rose gardens, which is essentially the same thing, more open green space. Those ranked the highest. And then just below that were accessible hardscape and pathways, lighting, more trees and shrubs. What user groups should the park service? The individuals felt that everybody on the list should be serviced, and the whole list there are residents of nearby neighborhood, veterans and their families, Rose Society members and their families, families with children, community groups, service clubs, organizations, youth groups, seniors and mature adults, emergency service veterans and their families. So they felt that the park should be there for anybody who wants to be able to use it. Let me see if there was anything else. So that's the responses to the surveys. So from there, I want to jump to some guiding principles that we all need to consider as we go through the design process tonight. Here we go. Yeah, thanks. Okay. So what we've got here are a number of criteria that the park needs to be. Oops. We'll just leave that down there. The park has to be, whatever we do in the park as we move through development, obviously has to be affordable. And that's going to, depend a lot on what city funding is available, what other funding is available. And, at the end of this process, we got to come away with something that we can actually do. It's got to be feasible and affordable. So the construction of the park has to be affordable, as well as the maintenance of the park. We get real excited about being able to see some changes on the ground or see, something happen there, but we also have to be able to have the funding, to be able to take care of it to a standard that is appropriate for the space. The park also needs to meet standards. It's got to meet safety standards. It's got to meet city construction standards. Also, again, maintenance standards. We have to do things that we can take care of so that the park looks the way it really needs to look. The park also needs to be equitable and legal. So that's sort of the legal end is not really my realm, so I'll just leave it at that. The park also has to be accessible. So we want, obviously, a whole variety of people to be able to come and experience the park in a meaningful way. So variety of ages, a variety of people people of all different types. If we want everybody to be able to access all points in the park. So of course everything we do is going to be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, other things like that. The things we do in the park also need to be appropriate. We're talking about a very special space here. We've got, it's the memorial park for many different things. So the space, the design and the space needs to be appropriate for the purpose of the park. So with that, as we move forward tonight, keep these different things in mind. If you have ideas or suggestions, try to balance them with these guiding principles here, and that'll really help us know which direction to go, and it'll help you all know what ideas are going to work in the space. So from there, I think we're turning it back over to Donna.
Thank you, Dave. You can leave that.
Okay.
Just to follow up with Dave's presentation, if there are any additional guiding principles that anyone would like to add, certainly welcome. Anything you can think of that we might have missed from the department? Mostly we try and make sure we follow all the laws and regulations and make sure all citizens are welcome into public spaces. Tonight, what I would like to ask and hope that everybody's okay with and certainly open to suggestion, but when we do public meetings like this, as a staff, we always try to honor the past history of the park and the past history of the process. I think one of the most difficult things when you go through public planning processes is when we get to the next phase and somebody in that phase wants to erase everything that's happened prior to. So one of the things that we've done as a department staff is try to always honor each step. And there's always some balancing act. But we do want to respect that, just like we're going to respect everything you have to say as we move it through the rest of the adoption process. So with that, we're here primarily to listen to you. And we hope that you're all here to listen to each other. Yes?
Based on what you just said, wouldn't that be a guiding principle?
Yes.
Past history?
Yes. That's a good one. Got it? Yes.
Do you have any history written of when that park was built, of what the original intentions were of the people that built the park?
The park was, we have a lot of different history pieces, and let me know if I miss this, but the park was originally dedicated to honor those veterans of war. And our records show that it was established in 1944 through the efforts of the Missoula Rose Society, particularly to commemorate the members of those who died in World War II. Okay? And there is a lot of history through that time as the monuments were added and as the other, additional wars occurred. A lot of interesting history about the name of the park that I was surprised as we read all the different names. I think there's about 8 different names the park has had or been considered to have at one time. But that's the reason for the park. That was the dedication.
Donna, I have one other
Yes.
suggestion up here regarding principles.
Please.
You have appropriate space and design.
Mm-hmm.
You can put a slash up as a design and say ceremonies or celebrations. Whatever goes on in that park should be appropriate for the park with regard to the ceremonies or celebrations or activities that go on in that park. Appropriate for...
So appropriate uses in the park per the design.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anything else?
Well, also, 2 of the memorials in there are declared by the governor as state memorials, the Vietnam and Korean memorial. And they're on the highway, they're advertised as a state memorial.
Yes, and we do have that documented in our records. Thank you. So there are 2 of the monuments, the Korean and the Vietnam, were, I don't know, you can help me with the correct word, but dedicated or proclaimed through state legislation to be state monuments. Okay? Anything else? Okay. Then as far as our discussion tonight, again, trying to listen carefully to each other. I encourage you to listen without judgment, and that's always a challenge. We teach a class to students at the university, and we talk a lot about what it means to be empathic, to try and walk a mile in somebody else's shoes and realize that we all have different experiences, different family and social relationships, and those things guide our ideas, our comments, our hopes, and our fears. And so if you could recognize that everybody's comments are valid, and they're important to them, so they're important to all of us. We'd sure appreciate that. And what we will have available all evening is something we call a parking lot. That's when a discussion item comes up that we maybe aren't specifically here to discuss tonight, but we recognize it as important. We put your comments in what we call the parking lot, and we'll visit with you individually after it, or if it's something that seems to lead us to or yet another public process of some type, we will take us there. In some cases, they may simply be questions that we just don't have necessarily the correct answer, and rather than giving you a hunch, we'd like to look up the answer for you. Are there any other ground rules for communications that anybody else would like to share for the evening? Does that sound okay with everybody then? Yes, please.
I'm just wondering if one of the guiding principles couldn't be, under Plan C, number 5, it's mentioned some existing memorials are relocated, but most can remain in place. And then on the next one, Plan B, number 3, it again mentions relocate some memorials, and it accepts the police and the Blue Star Highway to remain in place. I'd like to see one of the guiding principles is that the state memorials will not be moved. The Vietnam and the Korean.
Wait, let me do this with you. I hear what you're saying about not moving the monuments, but if you could, let's give James and Jenny a chance to go through their presentation. If I'm not mistaken, neither of those monuments is moved in any of their presentations. So once they move through them all and they explain why they've done these designs, why they've why they're showing them to you, then I think those comments on that sheet will make more sense to you.
Okay.
They're not meant, they're ideas at this point to get you to think, and you're ahead of us, and you're thinking. So appreciate that. Yes.
I'm a little bit confused about
Usually trying to work it out.
accessibility, equitable accessibility and restricting the use of the park to certain groups. How do those two work?
So accessibility is actually something we deal with through the Americans with Disabilities Act. As we move into this park and we make changes or renovations, we do need to make it accessible to those with disabilities. So that's a law. As far as equitable or what types of uses are appropriate, because we're public, we fall under First Amendment. And so the ways that we manage uses of parks is through a permitting process. So whatever regulations are placed on one event have to be on the other event. So we can regulate total number of uses, sizes of groups, whether or not there's alcohol, whether or not there's amplification, but we can't choose that anybody whose last name is Johnson can use it, but if it's Smith, you're out. We can't discriminate in any way or form, okay? So, and that's the legal equitable piece. There's certain things that just simply being public that we need to honor, and really that's very much what all the monuments are about, is respecting our Constitution and First Amendment. Okay? Are we? The good news here is that we're already 20 minutes ahead of schedule. So we had a little restroom water break ready for you, but if you're set, I think our team is ready to keep going. Everybody good? Anybody need a break? All right, thank you. If you want to take our guiding principles, we'll put them over here on our agenda. And then we can flip back down to our... I think that's more important. Get back to it. Well, you may have a 5-minute break whether you want one or
Yeah,
not.
that's break time.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there was a reason for that little break time.
Thank you, Dave.
Sorry. I got that picture up out of sequence.
Oh, okay. There I go again, asking for the impossible.
All right, we're back to where we wanted to be.
Do I-
Okay.
Would everybody like a few more lights dimmed? Would that help?
Yes,
Or-
please.
Yeah, I'm actually really impressed with the lighting in this room, that with this much light, you can see anything at all on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm the only one that can see it, huh? Oh. Whoa, can it be just a little bit lighter?
Need to see your notes there?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, that's good. Okay, I'm Jenny Miner-Sagan. James Poole and myself are both landscape architects, and we're working with the Parks Department to come up with a design for the project, for the whole site. And this is the fun part. I get to deliver the good news, and and we're glad that you're here. The first thing I want to do is just a real brief overview of more or less the current conditions at the park and some of the things that are stimulating this master planning process from more or less a design perspective. Donna and Dave from Parks and Rec have a very practical, hands-on, working on the ground, budget management sort of perspective. James and I get to think big and pare down to make it realistic. So I'd like to encourage you all to think big tonight too, and so we can get as much input from you as possible. So over the past 60 years, the park has lost some of its original organizational structure, just on the site. And that leads to some of the spaces maybe aren't as well defined as they were when the park was first put in. And because the spaces are not as well defined as originally planned, then the uses begin to become a little bit muddied. Okay, there are some maintenance considerations for the aging park infrastructure and the vegetation on the site that this process can help address as well. There is a lack of accessibility, back to your question on the accessibility word, to major portions of the park. For instance, the Rose Garden and the World War II Memorial do not have accessible walking surfaces by today's standards. Okay, there's a lot of interest in continuing to develop memorials in the park. And there is no vision for how to move forward into the future at this time. And that's what we're going to work on. So, we're here tonight to start developing this vision. Now, let's see if I can make these slides advance from here, which is the way this is supposed to work.
Try double clicking because it took a double click before.
Okay. Maybe I'm going backwards.
No.
I went way backwards. All right, I may need help.
Slides.
Okay.
That would be great. Can you find them?
Let's see.
What I want to do is move us through kind of four major ways of thinking about the park. This collection of images, they relate to gardens and memorials
You're on.
and parks. And I want to try to move through them quickly if I can make them move, for the purpose of stimulating ideas. That's what we want to do, is stimulate some ideas for the future design possibilities for the park. Okay, so Rose Memorial Park was a garden. Is a garden. And it was founded to remember people who gave their lives to serve and protect our country. The garden contains many different specific memorial structures. So we have a garden, we have memorials. The memorials provide a stimulus to reflect upon and remember. We're going to look at some images of spaces that are designed for reflection and remembrance. To reflect and remember the individuals and the events that are associated with each memorial. The garden also provides a place of inspiration for celebration and contemplation. And the park is part of the whole community. So, these images are intended to demonstrate a range of possibilities. Some of these are going to be way beyond our means in the city of Missoula. But the intention is to stimulate that quality of experience that you have when you're in the park. And we can work on those things through design at a level that are within our means, within Missoula. They will also have a lot of examples of gardens, memorials, and parks. And then you will see many of the elements in these images in the plans that James is going to present in a few minutes. So, with that, let's just move forward. I don't even know if I need this, because I'm not sure if it's going to work. Okay, gardens, they're beautiful, they're colorful, they're pristine, they come out early in the spring, they might have some kind of structure and enclosure. Okay, let's go next. They might be soft and carefree, and there might be one space that leads to another. Okay, next. They can be very colorful, right? And they can have special elements and focal points like fountains and green grass areas and fantastic roses, which we already have. This is a photo of our park showing the open grassy expanse with the trees. These are photos from our park also, and you can see the bands of roses laid out in patterns. And we have arbors and focal point items that might be improved through design as far as what they're actually focusing on. Memorials. Some of you may recognize some of these memorials. Some of the photos are from the internet. Some of the photos are photos I've taken over the years. The ones that I know where they are, I'll mention. The ones that I forgot or don't know, I won't say. I believe the one at the top is in Belgium. This is a Korean memorial. I think, is this in Washington, D.C.? Mm-hmm. This is in Minneapolis, and this is an amphitheater space, but it's also a memorial space. Okay, next. This is also it's actually St. Paul, Minnesota, as an abstract. It's both literal and abstract. Okay, next. These are in our own park, and we have a really nice collection of monument, object, artwork-based memorials with the Vietnam Memorial being very artistic, the Korean Memorial being, well, I'll just describe it as more matter of fact, and then this Gulf War Memorial being very simple and to the point. Next. The obelisk for the World War II Memorial in the Rose Garden could be a garden ornament anywhere. It's really part of that rose garden. It's really lovely the way it does. Okay, next. This is also in St. Paul, Minnesota. You can tell I took a trip there. This one was under construction while I was there, so it's just recently been completed. And I believe it has a rose garden component as well on their state capitol grounds. And this has a huge vehicle turnaround in it as well. And there are a lot of other memorial spaces near to this one. I believe this is an Iraq memorial, a temporary installation of flags. Memorials can be temporary also. They can take on different forms. Okay, next. This is another Iraq memorial. Again, a temporary installation. It's happening in a public space, but it's obviously temporary and pretty touching. Next. Will it go? Oh, here it goes. It went. Okay, these are some more memorials that are in our park. Each one is unto itself, has its own space, is very well defined and separated more or less one from the other. This is one that sits a little bit more in its larger landscape. It's open, you get a sense of where you are and what's beyond it. This is one that's very enclosed, and it's more of a focal point in rose gardens. There's a lot of different ways to do these memorials. This is showing the combination of our park, which this is a beautiful angle, I think, on our park with the memorial tree here. I was really touched by, obviously, how frequently visited the memorials are by the evidence of recent interaction by people. And you can see through this opening into the Rose Garden and the World War II memorial as well. This is 911. This was a year or two after 911. This building was across the street from the World Trade Center and was still standing there shrouded in this black cloth. Not a constructed memorial, but a very strong reminder of what had happened here. And this was a gathering of motorcyclists who were visiting all of the 911 sites. They were making a trip around the country. These are actually the police motorcycles that were parked there to block off the streets and greet these thousands and thousands of people on their motorcycles doing this memorial ride. So another form of memorial is a ride and moving through the landscape. Next. Reflection and remembrance. There's a lot of things that can cause us to remember things. It might be a song, it might be a smell, it might be something you see, something you read, it could be nothing at all that can trigger memory. This is just a beautiful calm setting. This is a temporary installation for 911 also in New York City. Next. We can remember joyous events and anniversaries, as well as this is the Oklahoma City bombing memorial. Okay, next. A lot of focus on water in some of these slides, not meaning to say that we need to have water, but there is something about the calmness and the stillness and the reflectivity of that medium that can cause us to stop and ponder. Next. Nice way to divide a space and create a focal point. And next. Contemplation and celebration, they do combine as well. This is a beautiful arbor that integrates garden elements with a structure that defines space. Next. And it can have an element of enclosure or a place to have a small group gathering. Next. Some of these are really traditional garden elements too, as far as gazebos and arbors, and that type of thing. And this is, the one on the right here is more like a grove that you might walk through that can also create that sense of contemplation. We can move through spaces as well. You know, our park is big enough to accommodate some of this kind of smaller division of space and focal points. Okay, park elements. These are a lot of traditional park elements. We've got fountains, arbors, tiered fountains. This is another temporary memorial installation within a public space, and it's I can't remember, it might even be Tiananmen Square, I'm not sure, but their shirts hung on a line, one after another, and this is an evening picture in the light. It's really dramatic. Next. Gazebos, shelters of some sort, sculpture, and water. Again, sculptural water elements that can be joyful and also a place of gathering and beauty. I think Rose Park, I was delighted to see that people like to use it for photography.
A little louder, please.
Sorry. Rose Park, one of the comments is that people like to use it for photography, and it's a beautiful place. These are sculptures, kind of dramatic sculptures, or just forming the earth to create spaces and beauty and allow more things to be introduced into the landscape. Open, grassy, treed areas. More kind of sculptural, abstract elements within a park. And now we're back to our park with our rose garden and the arbor, classic park garden elements. Other classic park and garden elements. These guys were really having a good time.
At 7 o'clock tonight, Ben will be presenting a program down in the computer lab. It's for parents. It's how to use MySpace and other sites. So if you're interested, please join us 7 to 8 o'clock in the computer lab downstairs.
Okay, MySpace next door. This is the last slide in any case, and I'll just leave it here. This is a very sculptural, large-scale landscape treatment, but the idea is it's leading us into the future, and James is going to share some ideas of what we might consider in our park.
I am the future.
He is the future.
Is everybody awake? I know the lights have been down for a little while now, so I hope we're not losing anyone. Okay, I'm fortunate enough to be the one who's going to do the really fun stuff. Jenny's part was kind of fun. But, I'm going to be presenting the initial conceptual designs that we have come up with as a design team. And I'm really happy that you're all here because we can certainly use your input. This is just a starting point. I want to make sure that you understand that these plans, they don't tend towards definitely the realistic. They tend towards intentionally taking a position. There are 4 designs, and each design pushes kind of a particular agenda. And this is done very intentionally because there are several potentially competing agendas for what happens with Rose Park. And so we wanted to look at these different perspectives and present some ideas that kind of raise up one perspective over another. But don't kind of get lured into looking at a design that's put up here and thinking that, you know, it's going to be installed just as you see it, because it's not. We don't intend for the final design. You know, you may be able to recognize some features you see in these concepts in the final design, but the final design will not come out of any of these concepts directly. We just want to show a lot of different options and see kind of how they interact with each other. This is not, maybe you've been involved with other processes. I know the Forest Service oftentimes will present, you know, 7 different schemes for how they're going to manage something, and the scheme that gets the most votes from the public is the scheme that's implemented, kind of thing. We're not really taking that approach. We're not showing any schemes that we believe are going to be implemented directly as you see them. We're just trying to promote discussion and kind of get your blood boiling. So it's okay if you look at one of these plans, and I fully expect to hear some hushed conversations and gasps and things like that as we go through. And we're trying to elicit that kind of response to get people to think. So part of what we did as our background coming into this as the designers was to identify kind of what we came up with was 4 major agendas at Rose Park. One is, I'll call the Rose Agenda. The park was originally established as a Rose Memorial. So there's certainly strong historical standing with regard to the place as a place to have roses as a living memorial. Second agenda I'm calling the memorializing agenda. Over time, other memorials have come into the park, and the park has become a place where people want to remember and recognize those who have given their lives in the service of the country and the community. So that's another very strong agenda. There's an event agenda. The park has come to be a place where a lot of public events happen. It's a very attractive place to do that. It's centrally located, and it accommodates mid-sized groups very well. So historically, again, we have some history that speaks to the event agenda. Political rallies, you know, peace rallies, sunrise services, after-school groups, you know, all kinds of different things in terms of events. And then the 4th agenda, which I think we have found it has a little bit quieter voice, perhaps, because maybe it's not as well organized as some of the other ones, but I call it the neighborhood park agenda. If we peel away the layers of the memorials and the roses and the events, you know, what we have is a neighborhood park. It is a Missoula neighborhood park. And so there's some functions that are associated just with a park, with grassy areas, with playing frisbee with your dog and throwing a baseball with your son and kicking a soccer ball with your daughter, and you know, throwing down a blanket and smooching with your honey. So that's another agenda. So what we tried to do, you know, there are some other issues that are rolled into this, but those were kind of the 4 major agendas that we identified. So each of the concepts addresses, kind of prioritizes one of those agendas. Okay. In terms of questions and answers, I know this is going to elicit potentially some strong opinions. And what we'd like to do, we have kind of an open house format scheduled after, when we're all through talking, it's time to listen to you. What we'd like to do is make it as intimate as possible and kind of listen to you one-on-one. So we'll have each of the 4 concepts will be on an easel around the room, and all of us here will be available to talk to individually in front of those concepts. So we're hoping to kind of have that type of interaction, opinionated discussion after the presentation. But anytime there's a point of clarification, if you can't see something well, you need to ask, what is that blob up in the left-hand corner? Those types of questions, please just jump in at any time and we'll address those. And Mr. Shaw, take it away.
All right.
Unless I can do it up here. Okay. So, Plan A, and you can follow along. Hopefully you all have the kind of the plan highlight sheets.
Does anybody need one of those? I can
This
take
is
care of it.
gentleman's. Okay, thank you. Most of these, don't worry about trying to read this. I have put this down on the sheet. So, Plan A, Grassy Neighborhood Park, we've given it that name. This is kind of the neighborhood park agenda rising to the surface. And the highlights of this plan are that it clusters the memorials and the memorial garden on the north end of the park. So what we're doing, we're moving the rose garden. We're moving it into an area that is specifically set up to be a memorial piece of the park, separate from kind of the neighborhood uses of the park, which move to the south. We relocate several memorials to this area. Now, in answer to this gentleman's question, we have taken it as a given that the Vietnam Memorial, the Korean Memorial will stay where they are. The Police Memorial, some of the concepts show it moved, some of them don't. So we're not, there would need to be a very good reason for that, but we're leaving that possibility open. Kind of same with the World War II Memorial. Some of the other memorials are monuments that could be fairly easily relocated, perhaps moved in their orientation or something. So we consider that some of these monuments aren't as difficult to consider moving. This plan does relocate some of these into this area. It does leave the police memorial in place.
Where is the World War II memorial?
In this plan, because the roses move, the World War II memorial moves. That's a tough one. I didn't know exactly where to put it. I ended up putting it here. We'll get into this. This is a pavilion, and I centered it in front of the pavilion, still associated with the roses. I didn't want to actually place it, suggest it on this side, because this is kind of an alley that leads to the Korean Memorial. This plan opens up the south side of the park to uninterrupted lawn to accommodate a range of leisure activities and non-structured recreation. So we're really taking a good half of the park and we're saying, this is a neighborhood park. Neighbors can flow in with their kids and do, what they like to do on a sunny day with their families and their pets. To kind of reinforce that, we're adding a naturalistic pond element, and it could be located, anywhere in this open grassy area.
That's for dogs to swim in?
So your dog can swim, yes. You have nicer smelling dogs. With a perimeter walkway, and it's just basically an area for relaxation. It's certainly going to attract some wildlife. It would attract ducks. It would attract geese, and the good and bad things that go along with attracting that kind of wildlife. I've been in communities where they hate the geese, kind of like deer. But that type of thing, and then model boats. It's nice to have a natural pond in a park, in a lot of ways. The ice skating, that was something that I thought of, and it's very, very questionable with the weather patterns we're currently in. But if we can ice skate out there 2 weeks, winter, that could direct the design of the pond to be of a depth that it's easier to get ice skating on it. Pedestrian circulation, and this is really the only one that does this. it's, you know, we introduce additional pathways in the memorial end of the park, but the grassy open end of the park, we just leave as grass, and people just walk through the grass, just like they do now. So this is very much the same, a similar type of circulation where, you know, a lot of parks are that way, where this park happens to not have a lot of A to B types of connections where there's constant travel between one point and another, which, like you see on the campus, leads to, you know, trails. Yes, sir?
Isn't there some serious concern and liability?
With a pond?
With that pond?
It can be addressed through design. It's something that very much needs to be considered, but it's not a deal breaker.
Well, is it not going to be the Memorial Rose Garden anymore? Changing the name?
Oh, the grassy neighborhood park, no.
Oh, no. I mean, no, this is just a suggestion of, it just acknowledges kind of the direction that this concept is going.
No, I didn't get the paper, so I was late. I had to take them out.
The names that James has on there doesn't have anything to do with the name of the park.
okay.
It identifies an agenda. as he was
Oh, okay,
explaining.
I was just curious. I didn't get that.
Here you go.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
That's okay.
That's all right.
Okay,
No worries, we're glad you're here.
Okay. We were gonna have- I figured you didn't want me here.
So the Rose Garden is expanded, and it's obviously, the layout has changed, but the amount of area for roses is expanded, and it's laid out a little bit differently, not so much in rows, but it's kind of a different approach to doing the rose displays. And one of the major features here is the addition of a rose pavilion. And the idea behind this pavilion is that it not only provides shelter, but it also provides a place for people to gather. And the idea is that it's open. It's open to both the rose side and the park side, so that events that would prefer to be associated with the roses, memorial events, Rose Society events, could use the pavilion facing, you know, and face their activities to this side. Other types of activities might want to use the pavilion and face out to this way, so it would serve multiple event functions. This design does entirely remove the playground area that's currently at this corner and turns it and removes some of the density of the vegetation and the hedgerow that is there, and brings that into the memorial part of the park. And in doing so, it opens up space for the possibility for a small number of additional memorials of moderate size. So that's A.
Where was the playground going then? It's just been eliminated?
It has been eliminated from this site.
Because that's the biggest neighborhood asset in that park.
I'd love to hear that comment. We want to make sure to leave that on your sheet or talk to us afterwards when we kind of get into that discussion. Ready? Okay, and it's really fun to see all the different ways that design can go. This one is, we're calling Formal Gardens, and this one kind of takes the rose agenda and puts it at the forefront. This design renovates the Rose Memorial Garden and upgrades it, but it still echoes the historical layout of the roses and kind of this matrix on a geometric layout in a square. It does this, but it enlarges the area a little bit. It slides it a little bit so that the center of the rose garden is on line with the two major access points that run right down the center of the garden in both directions. So a lot of historical echo to the design of this, even though we're kind of taking it and making it a little bit upgraded. We introduce a very formal layout in this park design. Major paths on axes here and here. One thing you notice about this design is it really brings in, connects the garden to Franklin Street, which right now it's very much disconnected from Franklin Street. So this is a very intentional way of doing that, opening up a major access. The other formal element is what we're calling a memorial promenade. And it's just a formally laid out pathway along which the memorials are located. We add, in this one also, we add a rose pavilion in the center. And we emphasize traditional period-style garden elements. And I'm thinking kind of the historical time that this garden was created. I hesitate to call it arts and crafts. It's a little bit beyond arts and crafts, but middle of the 20th century is kind of what we're trying to recreate with the garden elements. In other words, lots of arches and trellises. The pavilion in the center, I would envision kind of being an open, arched, latticey type of pavilion, so not a real modern structure. And actually, the idea here is to respect kind of the era that the garden first appeared. And we do that through pavilion architecture, trellises, and also the idea here is that all of these pathways would be crushed gravel rather than concrete or asphalt. It's a softer, more gardeny kind of surface, and it is fully ADA accessible if it's constructed properly. Some memorials, again, are relocated to the promenade, and this design could accommodate several new memorial sites. There could be some sites here, and actually this end of the garden hasn't been assigned any particular use in this design, so if there were a need for additional memorials and it was decided that they were appropriate, you know, there would be actually room for several new memorial sites in this design. This design also introduces the idea of adding a restroom facility, a standalone restroom facility at this end of the park. We keep the playground, but this restroom would be easy access to families at the playground, to people in the memorial area, and it's a pretty straight shot from the Rose Garden as well. It's also located close to the street, so security issues are pretty clean and simple there. But there is I'm making an assumption in this diagram anyway, that the city could acquire a piece of land. This is actually now part of under the ownership of this parcel at the corner.
What memorial would we have to move on this design?
That's a good question. These two memorials could probably stay pretty much where they are, but that's the Persian Gulf Memorial and the other conflict memorial that represents a number of different conflicts. These are very close to where they are now. They would just kind of be reoriented. The Vietnam, the Korean would stay in place. I showed the possibility, you know, the police memorial could actually stay here too. There would also be an option of relocating the police memorial if there was some feeling that it would be better to have it on the memorial promenade. Yes, sir.
Where is the obelisk going to be moved to in the Blue Star marker?
Excuse me? I'm sorry?
The obelisk of the World War II
The obelisk.
and the Blue Star marker, where are they?
Yes. The World War II memorial in this design is right here, and it has a kind of a very, very prominent location. It's the only memorial kind of on the inside ring of this promenade. So it's right on this axis, and you see it through all of, these are arbors, these darker pieces here. So it would be visible down this long row between all those arches, and it would be in the center of this promenade in a very prominent location, although it would not be directly associated with the roses anymore. The Blue Star marker, on several of these, I've shown it moving up to this area. Again, that's kind of a minor piece in many of these designs because, as you see, it could stay where it is as well. Yes?
There's no water in this one?
There's no water in this one. That's right. And I know it's hard, but a lot of this stuff is representational. So, maybe there's a little fountain underneath the arbor or something. I mean, if it came across, there's a very strong feeling that people wanted to see water, then it could be incorporated in some aspect in this design. Okay, I think we're ready for C. Is everyone doing okay? Okay. There's two more. Plan C, we labeled monuments and memorials, and this is the plan that kind of takes the memorializing aspect of the park and puts it at the forefront. This plan introduces an interwoven system of sidewalks. That does a couple of things. One thing, obviously, it gives great accessibility throughout the park. If you want to cross from anywhere to anywhere, you can get there comfortably on a nice winding pathway. All of these would be paved. But really, the origins of doing this web of walkways was to separate the park into many different spaces and then allow us to kind of create individual landscape rooms in lots of different places. Another aspect of this, and it's kind of light on here, but the idea is that we could berm up these little islands of land that are happening between the curvilinear walkways. So we'd have a little raised area here, this would be raised, this would be raised, this would be raised. We could raise all these areas, giving a lot of topographical interest. I'm sorry, berming probably isn't a word that is in everyone's vocabulary. And it just means to raise up the level of the ground in a mound. So that berming would be used to visually separate the spaces, so you couldn't just look straight across and see everything from one vantage point. It would hopefully create some mystery. So you'd feel an impulse to wander through the garden because you couldn't experience it all from one place. It would also allow us to put potential new and relocated monument sites to some of these areas, and using other forms of landscaping to create more intimate spaces for our memorials on an individual basis.
Where are the roses?
Okay, the roses, well, I'll get to that very soon. This reinforces a memorial theme with a strong, iconic memorial feature in the center. And in this case, I've shown it as a reflecting pool with a little fountain in the center and some flags at either end. And I'm thinking in my mind kind of a real Washington, D.C. monument kind of image. And it wouldn't have to be a reflecting pool. It could be just a plane of grass with, an arrangement of flags in it or something like that. But the idea here is that there's a strong element in the center of the park that is the focus of the park, that the pathways lead to, that is a very strongly memorial icon type of feature. The roses then would be used in conjunction with that central area to kind of reinforce. They would become a part of that strong memorial presence in the center of the park. And I've placed a few of the memorials in the rose garden here. And they would be laid out along the edges. And it would actually be quite spectacular to walk in between these roses into this area of the reflecting pool. And you likely would not see this pool from this area over here because of the berming. So it would be interesting.
How come you left the bathroom off that one?
Just because we wanted to show a lot of different options to stimulate conversation. And that's another great comment. I'm glad someone noticed that there wasn't a bathroom on this one. Do we need a bathroom? Well, quite possibly we do, and there's not one here. So, here's where we get to the idea.
There really aren't any bathrooms in that area.
In that area. So we'll definitely be pulling pieces from all the, the good parts of all the different designs into something cohesive that addresses the best. Some existing memorials again are relocated because the roses are moved. But in this plan, actually, this is the one where probably the most memorials can remain in place as they exist today. Because we're changing the central area, the World War II memorial would need to move. And I'm really sorry. Can someone tell me what the round black memorial is?
That one just sort of appeared one day.
Granada.
It's Doyle. No, it's Doyle.
Yeah.
Commander Doyle.
Okay.
World War II.
All right.
World War II.
Thank you.
And I think one of the emblems got stolen out of it. I'm not sure. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Well, both of those would be relocated. I've shown them, being part of the central feature, but they would need to be relocated. But the Blue Star could stay, the police could stay, the Persian Gulf and the conflict could stay, Vietnam, Korea, those all stay. And the existing playground in this one, this whole area, kind of the north chunk of the park here, doesn't change at all. Okay. And last but not least, the gathering place and events concept. This one takes the kind of the use of the park as a gathering place and makes it very central and promotes it. This puts a central plaza and sloping lawns in the center to create a natural amphitheater. So here's the central plaza. These banks of lawn are sloped up gently, with the idea being that you can observe from these lawn areas, just sit. There'd be no benches, no built-in formal type of seating, perhaps. Certainly there's not in this illustration. But you could view the events in the central plaza from this area. And it would certainly be our hope that these sloping lawns would be used for lots of other things too. Maybe the little kids can sled on them in the winter. And, we know how kids love to roll down the mounds at Karas Park. So hopefully, kids they'll do anything with sloped grassy areas. So, it would serve more than a sole purpose. But definitely the idea is that events would be held here. And the event space could promote both scheduled and unscheduled types of events. Sunrise services, memorial services, ceremonies, weddings, classes, after-school programs, neighborhood meetings, rallies, music. I was listening to NPR the other day talking about a park in Harlem where every Saturday morning the drummers kind of migrate to this park and play their drums for a couple of hours. I hear the bagpipers out in this park from time to time, doing their bagpipe music, and I love that. This would be the kind of place where they could do that, and people could be strolling by and stop and watch. Or the Society for Creative Anachronism, they joust and they do their sword play. How cool to have them doing sword play out here and to be there with your kids, being able to watch that. So that's the kind of image that we would hope to, promote. And actually, when Jenny was talking about temporary installations, I thought, this would be a cool place to put a temporary memorial installation as well. Again, relocate some of the memorials. Police and Blue Star Highway remain in place as I've drawn it. This design could accommodate a small number of new memorials. And, another element here, which I'm sure I have written down but I haven't gotten to, is this promenade walkway. And this is used to kind of divide the space between the event area and the memorial area. And it becomes a feature kind of all on its own. I envisioned it here as a tree, or ornamental tree line, very wide kind of ceremonial walkway with benches along it under the trees. But not only kind of being its own feature, it also divides the space. And I'm not sure where I was going with that. But there's an extensive series of walkways to promote good circulation through the park.
With the roses in that.
Thank you. The roses are located here and they form a backdrop to the stage area. And actually these are arbors, fairly large size arbors, along lines of which we saw in some of the slides that Jenny showed earlier. So this would really be pretty dramatic with it. And this could be a, kind of an upscale paving pattern of some sort. Nice, fine, nicely built arbors behind it on a large scale. The World War II memorial could sit in between those with the rose beds wrapping around the backside of it. And that's just one way of kind of realizing this idea, but that's what that shows, and that's where the roses are.
Where were you going to put the parking lot if you're going to have this as an events-oriented park?
Parking? You have the best questions. I'm glad
you
you're
need a
here.
parking lot if you're going to have all these events.
Well, and we can talk about that one-on-one. I think that would be a good conversation with Donna too. I'm not sure kind of where they are with that. This park does hold events now, and we don't have a parking lot there now, and it holds fairly large gatherings from time to time. And I think sometimes they start at nearby churches maybe, and then they walk here. And I'm sure, I don't live in this neighborhood, so I don't know, but I'm guessing that from time to time there's a large number of people that are parking on the street in the surrounding neighborhood. So it would be a good topic for discussion.
It is a problem, isn't it?
It is a problem. Okay.
But if you turn into an events-oriented park, there'll be a lot more events.
This is a great conversation for after. Let me kind of work through these, and then we can get into more free flow of discussion. This also, the other feature this introduces, the playground area is kind of changed in this option. The idea here being to have just a shelter, kind of a picnic shelter of some sort in this location that would serve as kind of an auxiliary gathering space for family gatherings or just impromptu picnics. And so there may be a need or a desire for a smaller play structure in conjunction with that. So this becomes kind of a secondary space in this design where smaller functions could happen. But it still kind of fits into the theme of gathering place. One other thing about this one that I think this does better than others is one of kind of the minor agendas for this park is that it's a real welcoming place for the downtown and for that neighborhood. In reality, probably 1,000 to 1 more people see this park out of the window of their car than ever step foot in it. So we do need to think about what this park looks like as you're coming down Brooks. If you're coming from out of town, you come through the 93 strip, things just change dramatically when you reach Mount Avenue, and part of that is the presence of this park. We have a real opportunity, I think, in this park to make a welcoming statement to the downtown, and this one does that very nicely by kind of orienting this beautiful setting towards the south where people come up and would see this. The other thing this does is, by raising this grade a little bit and creating a separate space here, it really increases the intimacy of the more contemplative area on the north end of the park. So, that's all I have to say.
Question?
Yes?
Yeah, the concept that they came up with when they established this park in 1944 was it was to be for veterans for the World War II veterans. With the idea that it wasn't going to be used for any other purpose. Well, up to this date, there's been a lot of changes. Your plan then is to add further with that change, right?
Well, I think that's a larger discussion that we need to have with Donna and the parks folks up.
Yeah,
Certainly
the
time
thing
has...
you're looking at there is size. If you want to put all that stuff in there, man, you're going to have that place packed. Now, maybe that's wrong, I don't know, but it would appear that way.
Let's continue that type of discussion. We have, I think we still got a pretty good chunk of time here that we can just talk individually in front of the plans and let us record some of the things that you've got to interject. For now, let's just take questions of clarification on the plans.
Can you have a handout for each one of these?
We are going to put them up.
Yeah, we have the boards.
We can take with us?
Oh,
I think we're going to...
We can work to post them at our website. We have not made copies of each one of these individually at this time. You have the written description of them. The other thing we do have in the back for you is some blank maps, if you will, of the park, so you can draw your own design. And remember that part of the visioning process is deciding how much stuff we want in this park. Less, more, how much there is today. Is this the last monument to those who have lost their lives in service? Or will there be many more? Those are the kinds of things that we're trying to hear from you tonight.
Yes, sir.
Carrying on with Frank's part, though, that was set there originally for World War II memorial with a rose garden. I noticed in 3 of your 4 plans, you move the rose garden wherever you damn well please, and move that monument. Yet the police monument wasn't put up more than 5-6 years ago, and it's not moved. What is that, sacrosanct to you or something?
Let's bring that into a individual discussion. I want to give everybody a chance to talk with us individually, and you know, it's great to see. I love having a room full of people to discuss things because it's just so fun to get a better understanding of seeing things through everyone's eyes, and so that's what we want to do tonight. And that's You know, that's a very, very pertinent comment, and we want to make sure to have a record of that. But let's kind of wrap this part of the presentation up so I can quit talking. Yes?
One of the major concerns I have is we have a pretty heavy tax burden in this town. And I can see that you folks have done a lot of work on this. My view is that we need to do as much as we can, but no more than we can afford. I think the basic structure of the park should be maintained as much as possible. I think the sidewalk system ought to be improved, so it goes around most of the memorials and the Rose Garden. Water features are extremely expensive and very high maintenance, and I would certainly not be for any kind of a water feature. Low maintenance landscaping. I know that
All the time around here, because I think everybody's going to have a whole list, and what we want to do is get those all written down. Is that right?
I didn't hear what you said first. What do you want me to do? Just
Charlie giving us a good segue, so just hold on a second.
Yeah.
It's very clear that everyone here is ready to start sharing what they want to say and what they want to do. So, and we want to make sure we get all of your comments recorded. In fact, you'll see in the question and answer sheet, it addresses costs and all of that. But what we'll also do is we'll get them up on the boards. So there's a lot of opportunities here now. We'd like to make a transition. Let you take a little break if you want one. We're going to have a board at each design, so you can write right on that. We'll have several sticky notes. If you want to make a comment and put it right on the spot and say, I want the World War II monument here, that's okay. You can do a drawing or a design. And this is the time where we've learned that we need to trust the process and all of your comments, and so we want you to do that with us. What we usually find through these processes is if everybody has an opportunity, about 90% of your comments match, believe it or not. That is usually what happens. When they don't, then sometimes we have to go back to you for clarification or to ask more questions. Yes?
One question, what's the timeline or process you're going through?
What we're looking for is your comments this evening, and if you'd like to take documents with you, we'd like to get them back on Monday, if possible.
I meant the decision process itself. Are you going to be wrapping up and making a decision in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? What is it?
Okay, so we're going to take comments through Monday. We'll compile those comments, and it'll be real easy to determine if there's several comments of similar for James and Jenny to go forward with the design. Could be 30 to 60 days before we feel like there is a draft final site plan, and then we would take it through the next step in the public process. One of the reasons we ask for all of your contact information is so we can keep you informed as to when there's a design ready for you to view. Yes?
I'd like to make just one more comment.
Sure.
My father was one of the original 3 men that bought the property and donated it to the city. I have a written history that he wrote, excuse me, in this comment, or in this writing, he comments that there was a formal dedication of this, and it's worth noting and should be emphasized that there was a meeting held for the purpose of dedicating this park as a living war memorial to our war dead and for no other purpose. You've got a whole bunch of other purposes in here.
And we're already at a point where we've introduced other purposes.
Yeah, now I think, I agree with the original founders that this should be kept as a living memorial to our war dead and for no other purpose. That's the history of the park.
And it also says in the document, no time is to be given over to children for playgrounds or organized sports.
If I could just for a moment, remember at the beginning we said one of the guiding principles is we would honor the history. Now, there's history from 1940s, and there's history that takes us through today. Okay? What we want to hear from you, we're not going against the deed, the original dedication, there's been no comment or mention of that. Okay? And when James started his presentation, he told you this would perk your opinions. That's okay. That's what we're looking for. We're not, now is what we want to hear is, what are your priorities? What is most important to you? What aspects did you like of each plan? Which plan did you like best? Which ones do you feel honors the original intent, if that's the most important one to you? It is definitely important. We want you to rank those things. What aspects of the park are missing? One of the things we have to do as staff with the Parks and Rec Department is recognize that we're currently in a war and there will likely be more wars. How do we deal with that? Should we allow people to be able to access all of the monuments? Is it appropriate that somebody in a wheelchair can actually go up to the World War II monument? Is it appropriate that we add a restroom? Or do we stick with the way the park was and move it back to 1945, 1960? That's what you're going to help us with. Where's the time frame? What are the things that need to be there? What do you value most about this park? Does that make sense?
Can you put these on the internet?
Yes, we can. Yes.
You will?
You're the first to see them, to have them unveiled. I would suspect that they would be up by late tomorrow, Dave. You can probably work with Becky on that.
And what's the rest?
We will post that on the sheet up here, real large for you to see. Okay? Yes?
Yeah, this seems like an incredibly short time. You need all this feedback from us by Monday, and you don't even have enough on the internet yet.
Well, we didn't want to put it up on the internet without the information that you have. Your information is very, very important to us because you got it presented to you in a full context. Okay?
Well,
Still
we
pretty
can,
short time.
we can do it on the internet too.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And if you need more time, we can work with you on that. Just let us know.
Or the coffee and donuts.
You know, those are at breakfast. I told you that. So,
I was missing those.
if you would grab pens, pencils, markers, fill out your forms, take them with you for later, draw a plan. We really want to hear from you. And please don't assume that all these things are going to be smashed in or none of them are going to happen.
What's the website?
We're gonna write that up on the board so that everybody can see it.
Yeah,
And Jenny and myself and Dave and Donna, we're here to talk to you individually, so.
Yeah, do circulate and we'll take individual comments on each plan.
Really nice work.
Yes, you make it awful hard to choose.
Yeah, you know, so what's your involvement?
So we have,
You don't have a link? You don't have a link?
It'll be real bold, right on there. There's also